Hey Kyle, I just went back and attached my response to your original video about creativity. For some reason, when you just push respond or post a video response, it doesn't upload as an attachment or a response to your video. I have to do that after it uploads, so I'll try to remember to do that for this video. Um, but I'm glad you're going at least halfway into this metaphysical um, conundrum or series of conundrums here. Um, and I guess to get to this notion of creativity as just a rearrangement of memes, I certainly don't disagree with you that create any creative expression always has some kind of a foundation, a historical context. Um, Creativity doesn't occur in a vacuum. It's certainly creative geniuses stand on the shoulders of giants, right? They inherit a wealth of knowledge from their past and from their current situation, and they produce something new out of that. Certainly. But the reason I don't like viewing creativity is just kind of a um, iteration of memes is that the whole theory of mimetic evolution, it's an attempt to account for culture among organisms, sufficiently complex organisms like human beings, but in a way that ultimately reduces culture to biological drives. So ultimately, our culture is just um, it's the frosting on the cake, and the cake is um, the urge to for males pass on your seed, and for females to raise the child, and that's completely sexist. But that's basically what uh, mechanistic biology and neo-Darwinism says about life. Life is essentially sex and death. That's evolution, chance and necessity. Um, and the only purpose we have as organisms is to pass along that genetic uh, code. And, human beings, being organisms, therefore, regardless of their culture, are still ultimately just trying to pass on the genetic code. So, creativity then is kind of an accident. Any of the memes we exchange are just you know subtle ways of finding a mate. Is what it would come down to. And there are other ways of interpreting the mimetic theory of cultural evolution. This is what Dawkins, I think, invented this mimetic idea for, in order to be able to reduce culture to biology, to say it's the same mechanism with the same aim, just on a different uh, level, with a different medium of transmission. Um, Ideas instead of genes. But what it does is it takes all value out of culture, out of ideas, and out of creativity. And I think, for me, something creative is so named because it is more valuable than what came before. And value is something that can't be reduced to my desire to reproduce my genetic inheritance. Um, Artists don't paint, don't write poetry, don't you know create because they're trying to find a mate. And so culture and creative expression can't be reduced to these biological drives rooted in selfish genes. So that's why I kind of don't like the reduction of creativity to mimetic um, imitation in a slightly novel way. I think that doesn't do creativity justice because if you look at the evolution of human culture and human consciousness, there have been leaps which have been taken at various stages. Like the leap from tribal hunter-gathering cultures where the individual is kind of submersed in their community and they don't even identify themselves as individuals to a more mythic agricultural structure where the individual for the first time is starting to gain a sense of themselves as a psyche, you know, in a world that obeys certain patterns, and you know they're capricious patterns. The patterns are personified as gods that can make new decisions at certain points. Um, and you know, and then you have the shift to this mental, rational, scientific way of thinking, and it, you know, each stage is completely unanticipated by the one prior to it. Like you could never predict um, scientific consciousness from mythic consciousness. You know, it's, Richard Dawkins likes to say that mythology is just bad science, but I completely disagree with him. Mythology is not science. It's not an attempt to know an object separate from yourself. It's an attempt. Mythology is an attempt to participate in the unfolding of the immediately present world around you. It's a certain way of relating to nature. Science is a completely different way of relating to nature. Um, so, you know, if you look at human history, you see these creative leaps into novel patterns of self-expression and self-experience that, to me, cannot be reduced to, you know, a simple random genetic mutation and a natural selection. I mean, creativity has to be. Creativity is one of the reasons that I don't think mechanistic biology can really account for life, because it can't account for human beings, for human culture, for human values and spirituality and philosophy. It can't account for what we are capable of. Nor can it account for what a single cell's organization, uh, you know, displays for us. You know, I don't think autopoiesis as the organization of the living can be given a mechanical explanation. Uh, and you know, this gets us into cause and effect. And I just made a video about this in response to Atano C, I think is his channel name, about how within a cell, you know, various components are related to one another in a holistic way, in a way beyond just efficient causation, in the sense that, you know, this organelle doesn't have to relate immediately through an exchange of forces to this organelle over here. They are coordinated simultaneously to perform a certain larger function, the function of the whole organism or the whole cell, in a way that's not reducible to efficient causation, to what we normally think of as cause and effect, but displays formal and final causation. You know, a certain idea, a whole organism, a form, is evidenced by the activity of an organism, and a purpose, obviously, because organisms have feelings. And I think, you know, when we talk about free will and determinism, as I said in my response to Gary, these are such opposed concepts that you're never going to get them to work together, and there's a, you know, an impassable paradox when you try to work out these ideas, because it's basically free will and determinism. That whole framework is based on a mind-body dualism, where you have two separate substances: the soul, which is free to act as it wishes, and the mechanical body, which is made of matter and so is determined by cause and effect. You can't get these two substances to interact in a coherent way. They're just too different. And, you know, I've been studying Whitehead's metaphysics lately, and what he tries to do to bridge this dualism is to interpret cause and effect as directly related to our experience, to what we would normally call our mental experience. And when he does this is very simply, it takes effect, E-F-F-E-C-T, and understands it as affect, A-F-F-E-C-T. So for us as a human being, we are affected, A-F-F-E-C-T, by the past. In other words, we feel it, and based on that feeling, we have to integrate it with our own desire for creating a possibility. So we're not determined by what affects us, but it does form the basis of how we then respond. So the past, the causational aspect of reality, affects us, and we are then forced to compensate for it in some way, to respond to this objective